The modern metropolis wasn't built with conflict in mind. These vast urban sprawls exist because of power grids, supply networks, and predictable daily patterns. When global warfare erupts, metropolitan areas don't gradually adjust to the new reality. They collapse with shocking speed. Today, I'm breaking down the actual sequence of events that unfolds across a contemporary city during the initial 2 days of worldwide military conflict. This isn't a cinematic fantasy. This is the documented reality, tracked hour by hour, as infrastructure crumbles, populations respond, and recognizable streets morph into alien territory. The greatest threat in contemporary warfare isn't the armaments themselves. It's the velocity at which ordinary existence disintegrates once the frameworks supporting it vanish. The urban environment where you start your morning on the first day bears no resemblance to what you'll encounter 72 hours later, and grasping how this metamorphosis progresses could determine whether you make it through or get consumed by the chaos. So let's begin at the precise instant when everything shifts. It's 7 minutes past 6 in the morning. The notification arrives. Every mobile device across the metropolitan area vibrates in unison. Emergency broadcasts, breaking news alerts, social platform eruptions. The communication is straightforward and absolutely horrifying. Nuclear armaments have been deployed somewhere across the globe, and additional strikes are anticipated. In mere minutes, the city's emergency response line becomes completely paralyzed. Not due to actual crises occurring yet, but because countless residents are simultaneously demanding information. Cellular infrastructure buckles beneath the unprecedented demand. Glancing through your window reveals neighbors engaged in identical behavior, eyes locked on screens, attempting to reach relatives, scanning their surroundings with bewilderment and mounting terror. 7 o'clock arrives. The exodus commences. The initial surge of fear doesn't manifest as chaos or theft. It's pure migration. Every vehicle owner attempts to evacuate the city at once. Interstate routes designed to accommodate peak commute traffic suddenly experience quintuple their standard capacity. Fuel stations that typically manage modest queues now feature waiting lines extending across multiple city blocks. But complications emerge rapidly. Digital transaction platforms begin malfunctioning under the strain. Payment card scanners freeze. Cash dispensers empty within 60 minutes. Business proprietors recognize the approaching storm and either shut down instantly or demand physical currency exclusively. The handful remaining operational charge extraordinary rates for essential goods. 8:30. Transit infrastructure fails. Mass transportation ceases functioning within a few hours. Bus operators desert their assigned routes. Underground rail networks close citing safety protocols. Aviation hubs halt all commercial departures and transform into military logistics centers. Those without personal vehicles or driving capability become instantly stranded in an increasingly hazardous urban core. Senior citizens, individuals with disabilities, households with small kids. They're left observing everyone else escaping. Interstate systems transform into static parking zones. Vehicles left behind when fuel runs dry. Collisions obstructing numerous traffic lanes. Emergency responders cannot navigate through. The network engineered to transport populations efficiently becomes a cage holding them captive. 10 in the morning. Distribution channels fracture. Transport vehicles cease operations, not because of direct military action, but because operators refuse entering cities that represent potential targets. The instantaneous resupply framework keeping urban retailers stocked disintegrates during these opening hours. Supermarkets watch their inventory disappear, not from panicked purchasing, but because replacement stock isn't arriving. Drugstores exhaust prescription inventories. Fuel depots cannot receive tanker deliveries. The intricate logistics web sustaining cities through trucks, railways, and warehouses grinds to a standstill as employees abandon positions to safeguard their households. Midday on day 1. 12 hours following the initial warnings, the metropolitan landscape has already transformed fundamentally. Approximately half the residents have departed or are attempting departure. Essential municipal functions are deteriorating. The implicit agreement maintaining civilized urban existence begins fragmenting. Yet this represents merely the opening phase. 1 in the afternoon. Electrical grid destabilization. Power consumption skyrockets as everyone charges electronics, operates climate control, and attempts food preservation. Meanwhile, generating station personnel are vacating their workstations. Grid controllers balancing electrical distribution across territories cannot coordinate effectively because communication networks remain overwhelmed. Scheduled outages begin, not from hostile attacks, but from infrastructure instability. Complete districts lose electricity for extended periods. Intersection signals fail. Road illumination systems go dark. Digital security apparatus shuts down. 3 in the afternoon. Municipal water infrastructure under pressure. City water operations encounter unprecedented consumption as residents fill bathtubs, storage vessels, anything capable of holding liquid. However, the electric pumps sustaining water distribution are impacted by electrical grid difficulties. Water flow diminishes across many zones. Certain neighborhoods lose water access completely. The treatment facilities purifying drinking water operate with minimal staffing as workers depart to verify family safety. 5 in the afternoon. Communication infrastructure collapses. Cellular transmission towers begin going offline. Not from deliberate strikes, but from electrical failures and excessive load. The limited functioning towers cannot manage the traffic as countless people attempt simultaneous calls. Digital connectivity becomes unreliable. The fiber networks and data centers transmitting information require uninterrupted electrical supply. Emergency communication frameworks designed for contained disasters become overwhelmed by crisis magnitude. 7 in the evening. Emergency response systems disintegrate. Law enforcement departments lose contact with field units as radio networks malfunction. Numerous officers fail to report for assignments. They're defending personal families or attempting to evacuate private neighborhoods. Fire services confront identical problems. Machinery requiring fuel cannot be refueled. Aerial ladder apparatus and rescue trucks are abandoned when fuel stations cannot pump gasoline during power interruptions. Medical centers activate crisis protocols, but personnel numbers are critically thin. Many healthcare workers are trying to locate family members or evacuate personal residences. Emergency treatment facilities are inundated with casualties from traffic incidents and injuries sustained during evacuation attempts. 11 at night. Conclusion of Day 1. 24 hours after initial alerts, the city has shed most of its population and most essential services. Remaining inhabitants are primarily those unable to depart, the economically disadvantaged, seniors, the infirm, and those resolved to protect property. But the genuine transformations are just commencing. Quick question. If forced to decide between remaining to defend your residence or departing with only portable possessions, which option would you select? Share in the comments what you believe you genuinely do. Day 2. 6 in the morning. The scavengers emerge. The second day opens with organized pillaging, not spontaneous theft, but methodical stripping of deserted commercial spaces and residences. Groups with transportation move systematically through vacant neighborhoods, claiming anything valuable. The sparse police presence, still functioning, concentrates on safeguarding critical installations like medical facilities and administrative buildings. Property violations go largely unaddressed because insufficient officers exist, and they cannot coordinate effectively without operational communication networks. Store proprietors who remain to defend businesses confront impossible decisions: surrender their property or endanger their lives defending against increasingly desperate individuals. 8 in the morning. Territorial assertions. Neighborhoods retaining residents begin establishing defensive collectives. Sometimes it's authentic community collaboration. Sometimes it's armed factions seizing control of territory and supplies. Barriers materialize on residential thoroughfares. Residents prevent unfamiliar people from accessing their neighborhoods. The presumption of free movement throughout the city evaporates as different zones become dominated by different factions. 10 in the morning. Resource conflict. The few operational fuel stations become flashpoints. People will fight for gasoline because it determines the difference between escape and entrapment. Queues extend for blocks and confrontations erupt as supplies dwindle. Food becomes primary currency. People exchange valuables for preserved goods. Technology for bottled hydration. The sophisticated economy based on currency and electronic payments is supplanted by straightforward bartering. Medical provisions become extraordinarily valuable. Pharmacies that haven't been ransacked are defended like strongholds. Those with chronic medical needs confront life-threatening shortages of prescription treatments. Noon. Government intervention. The National Guard receives activation orders, but confronts identical logistics challenges as everyone else. Military transport needs fuel. Personnel require sustenance and water. Communication between detachments is sporadic at best. Martial authority is proclaimed in some territories, but implementation is inconsistent. The legal framework that typically processes arrests and maintains social order has predominantly collapsed. Military leadership makes determinations based on immediate tactical requirements rather than legal protocols. 3 in the afternoon. The exodus persists. A secondary evacuation wave begins as people comprehend the situation won't stabilize quickly. This includes many who originally chose to stay: business owners, neighborhood leaders, individuals who believed they could weather the crisis. The highways remain congested, but now with pedestrians instead of motorists. Families with youngsters, elderly individuals with mobility aids, groups transporting belongings in shopping trolleys. The fortunate ones possess bicycles. 6 o'clock, day 2. As twilight descends on the second day, the city resembles a catastrophe zone, even without direct military engagement. Streets are scattered with deserted automobiles, shattered glass from looting, refuse accumulating as waste management has completely ceased. The sparse, functioning illumination reveals a terrain of vacant structures and obscure shapes moving cautiously through the urban devastation. The vibrant, active city of 48 hours prior has become something from dystopian cinema. 9 at night. New authority frameworks. In zones where people persist, novel organizational forms develop. Sometimes it's community assemblies attempting equitable resource distribution. Sometimes it's authoritarian figures who dominate neighborhoods through violence. The official administration, mayor, legislative council, municipal agencies either evacuated or lost legitimacy. Genuine authority belongs to whoever commands food, water, fuel, and armaments. 11 at night. Nocturnal hazards. The city after sunset becomes extremely perilous. No law enforcement patrols. No functioning illumination in many territories. Clusters of desperate individuals moving under darkness cover, seeking resources or protective shelter. Residents who stayed construct barricades inside their homes. Windows are sealed. Entrances are fortified. The urban space that once felt secure and welcoming now feels like a combat zone. Day 3, early morning hours. The revised standard. In the pre-dawn period of Day 3, a new pattern of metropolitan existence has crystallized. Small collectives control separate territories. Movement between zones is hazardous. Essential municipal functions like electricity and water operate intermittently, if whatsoever. The city has transformed from a sophisticated, interconnected framework supporting countless people into a collection of isolated encampments and forsaken areas dominated by whoever possesses sufficient strength to maintain them. 6 in the morning. Day 3 commences. 48 hours after global warfare initiated, the city appears fundamentally altered. Population diminished by over 80%. Infrastructure deteriorating. Governmental control superseded by local warlords or community factions. But here's what's genuinely transformed. The presumption that metropolitan existence is secure, efficient, and structured. The conviction that utilities will perpetually function and assistance will perpetually arrive. The social compact that enabled countless strangers to coexist peacefully in proximity. All of that has been destroyed in merely 2 days. Here's a challenging one for the comments. Do you believe cities would reunify after something like this, or would they remain fragmented into separate territories? What do you think would occur to urban existence long term? The physical metamorphosis. After 48 hours, the physical terrain of the city has changed drastically. Roads engineered for transportation are now obstacle courses of abandoned machinery. Structures intended to accommodate commerce stand hollow with broken windows and forced entries. Parks become displaced person camps for those with nowhere else. Parking areas transform into trading posts where people exchange commodities. Public facilities become fortified locations for whatever groups manage to claim them. The infrastructure that enabled urban existence, traffic signals, street illumination, electronic displays, either doesn't function or functions sporadically. The city appears abandoned for months, not merely 2 days. The human toll. The people persisting in the city after 48 hours are fundamentally different from the citizens inhabiting it before the crisis commenced. They're tougher, more distrustful, more concentrated on immediate survival than future planning. Children living through the initial 48 hours have witnessed their safe, predictable reality destroyed. They've discovered that adults cannot always shield them, that regulations can shift instantly, that normal existence can vanish without notice. The elderly and disabled unable to evacuate confronted the highest death rates not from direct violence but from absent medical attention, medication deficiencies, and exposure to circumstances they're not physically prepared to manage. The social architecture. The sophisticated social architectures that made metropolitan existence functional, governance, commerce, education, healthcare, have either disintegrated or transformed into something unrecognizable. Educational institutions are shuttered indefinitely. The children remaining receive instruction from parents or community groups emphasizing survival capabilities rather than traditional academics. Medical centers operate more like battlefield medical stations, emergency treatment exclusively, concentrated on trauma and contagious diseases rather than the comprehensive range of medical services available previously. The economy has regressed to bartering and direct service exchange. Currency signifies nothing when electronic transactions don't function, and there's nothing available to purchase anyway. The psychological ramifications. Perhaps the most significant change is mental. Urban inhabitants who survived the initial 48 hours no longer presume tomorrow will resemble today. They don't trust that utilities will operate, that rescue will materialize, that unfamiliar people have benevolent intentions. The optimism and forward-thinking characterizing normal metropolitan existence is supplanted by daily survival mentality. People make determinations based on immediate requirements rather than future objectives. The worldly perspective that accompanies living around diverse populations is replaced by fierce dedication to small tribal collectives and wariness of outsiders. The long-term actuality. Cities undergoing this kind of 48-hour transformation don't rebound to their previous condition. Even if warfare concludes, even if infrastructure gets reconstructed, the social confidence and sophisticated organization that made metropolitan existence possible has been obliterated. Some territories might recuperate and rebuild. Others become permanent wastelands, too devastated and depopulated to sustain normal metropolitan operations. The urban terrain becomes a mosaic of recovery districts and deserted zones. The generation experiencing the initial 48 hours of urban disintegration will never completely trust sophisticated systems again. They'll perpetually maintain emergency provisions, perpetually have contingency strategies, perpetually assume that normal existence could disappear at any instant. The ultimate reality. This transformation from operational city to post-apocalyptic wasteland in merely 48 hours isn't speculative fiction. It's precisely what transpires when the sophisticated systems supporting metropolitan existence fail simultaneously. Cities are remarkably vulnerable. They depend on continuous inputs of sustenance, water, fuel, and electricity from external sources. They require sophisticated coordination between countless people who predominantly don't know each other. They presume that everyone will observe regulations and trust establishments. Eliminate those presumptions, sever those supply connections, and metropolitan civilization collapses faster than anyone wishes to acknowledge possible. The comfortable metropolitan existence that seems so permanent and steady can evaporate within days. And once it's disappeared, reconstruction requires not days or months, but years or decades. The city you inhabit currently could be transformed equally completely and equally rapidly. All it requires is the appropriate kind of crisis at the precise moment, and the urban reality you know disappears permanently. Understanding how that transformation occurs isn't about generating fear. It's about acknowledging how rapidly everything you rely upon could shift. Because next time you're trapped in congestion or irritated with municipal services, remember it could all vanish in 48 hours. And once you comprehend that, you'll never perceive your city identically again. Final question for the comments. After witnessing all this, what's the first action you take differently in your city today to become more prepared? I'm genuinely curious what people consider would be most critical to modify. Next time you traverse your metropolitan center or navigate through your neighborhood, remember this video. Observe how everything relies on electricity, fuel, communication, and countless people cooperating peacefully, because now you understand how rapidly it could all disappear.